Lord, I throw my books away. I wrote a note to my teacher, Lord. Try 61 today. I said, please see somebody for me. I said, please see somebody for me. If you see my baby, tell her she's all right with me. The Newport Folk Festival was just fun. It was just great fun. You could hear the best of the best. The crowd at the night concerts were big, 15, 16, 17,000. And all day were the workshops over the grounds.
You know, if you look at the program, it's like 40 names. And, you know, those 40 names were, you know, Brownie McGee St. Terry, Robert Pete Williams, Dave Van Ronk, Mississippi, Fred McDowell, John Hurt, Sun House, you know, I mean, it's just everybody, all of the names.
All of a sudden you got these festivals bringing in a lot of the old timers, and I was so thrilled to pieces that these guys were getting a spotlight on them, getting all this love, you know, was coming up for whatever reason.
It was exciting. It was very exciting, you know, that there was some place where people actually cared about these older musicians.
Fred had his good spot there, and he was with Annie Mae, his wife, at that time. And he was captivating. He was just going to get his work done and just make more fans.
I'm singing about amazing grace, amazing grace, sweet sound, sweet sound, Savior rest, Savior rest, Savior rest like me, no now, now I'm bound, blind.
They were both quite devout people and attended church, and I suppose that Annie Mae couldn't quite countenance singing blues, so she just sang the religious songs with him.
Lord, I'm going down south, baby. I believe I will share my hood. Well, I'm going down south, baby. I believe I will share my hood.
It was all kind of brewing at that time that people who grew up in these cities, especially, you know, or in the North, they really never encountered this really authentic Southern life experience, especially with African Americans from their viewpoint, you know. And this was a time before there was really official end to segregation still. This was still years to come. And that, I think, helped tremendously in the long run, that there was this awareness that these people really were extraordinary contributors to our culture.
Well, the folk revival was based on a lot of baby boomers that didn't know what they wanted to do with their life. They weren't satisfied with the stucco house, middle class, urbanite thing that was happening, and they were looking for something else. So a counterculture grew out of that. You get to the early 60s, all those kids have banjos and guitars, and they're interested in folk music in whatever way that they can get it.
People like Harry Smith were putting together their anthologies. People like Chris Strakowitz were going down south and recording these people, the Lomax collection. Suddenly this stuff became available. All of that came together at a time when there was this hunger, not only to appreciate music, but to make it ourselves.
In the early 60s, the whole country was focused on what the counterculture was doing there. I mean, in this burgeoning era that went from the Kingston Trio to Peter, Paul, and Mary, then really opened up to a lot more roots oriented and rock and roll. Folk rock was coming out of England and America. And most importantly, the revival of country blues and city blues, brought out of obscurity by the love of these basically white middle class college kids falling in love with folk music. Changed the course of musical history.
John Kennedy said, yeah, before he died, well, the two more roads that he wants to ride, Lord John Kennedy. Lord John Kennedy said, before he died, Lord, and two more roads he wants to ride, Lord, he wants.
A lot of the music available to the young person back then was of such stupefying banality and middle-agedness that anything would have been a relief. Rock and roll had thrown a lifeline to the gasping teenager a few years beforehand. But if you had kind of felt that you'd grown a bit out of or beyond rock and roll, but you didn't want to be listening to your parents' music, the blues was your answer.
People were just dying for change, and it came up in rock and roll. And like Muddy Waters said, the blues gave the baby, and he found the parents really, and it's the blues.
People were looking for authentic roots music, and there is no more authentic roots sound than Fred McDowell and the musics that surrounded him in Gravel Springs.
I had done a lot of recording from 61 to 63, but never in Mississippi. So here we came. We got on 55, and then at Como, we decided to get off, see if we could find Fred McDowell.